Hello, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome to Books and Beer. I'm Luke Richardson, and I'm joined today by David Abbott. Here he is. I'm going to put your name on the screen as well to make it look official. Joining us from India today, which is
That's right.
amazing. That's
Yep, in
fantastic.
Bangalore.
Yeah, in Bangalore, amazing. I'm just going to quickly. Sorry to do this. I think I've pressed the wrong button. I'm just going to quickly switch that over. There we go. Yeah, that's brilliant. So it's late in the evening for you.
Yep, 10:30.
Nice.
So I'm actually from my waist down. I'm in my pajamas. I'm just wearing a shirt to look decent. Like the BBC newsreaders and sitting there in their shorts.
I think most of the working world has been doing that for the last 2 years, to be fair.
Yeah.
So. I think it's a really good thing. Well, thank you for staying up a little later or extending your work day or keeping the top half pajama free for the and speaking to us. But it does mean that you've got very little excuse not to be having a beer / whatever your alcoholic drink of choice is. So let's talk about that first of all. Yes.
Yes.
What's that?
It's a small batch Indian gin.
Nice.
It's distilled in Goa with 12 botanicals, Indian botanicals, and it's not. I was saying before we came on behind this, it's not actually available in Bangalore. It's because of India has some quirky licensing rules. It's state run rather than nationally run, and so I can't buy this here. So I had some very good friends bring it down for me recently, and they gave it to me as a Diwali present. So
fantastic!
Thank you, Mohit and Tina, if you're watching.
Yeah,
and, that's what I'm having now. Cheers.
That looks so fresh, so wonderful. Yeah,
very refreshing.
I can imagine sort of the Indian spices and the flavors and fragrances of India work very well in gin as a drink. Anyway,
yeah, it's something that's really come to the forefront in certainly in probably the last 5 years or so. There's maybe about 10 Indian gins now. And when you think about it, there's so many of the foreign gins are foreign to India, but so many of the gins that we know are actually have botanicals from India. But there was never actually a gin made in India apart from one horrible one called Blue Ribbon, which you buy in a plastic bottle. And I think your car can run on it. It's horrible.
That's it.
You've got to drink these new ones are fantastic.
In the rain.
Yeah. But the new ones are really good, and it's become very popular in India. Before Indian men, only used to drink whiskey, and now people are drinking wine and a lot of gin and craft beers as well. There's a lot of craft breweries now.
I was going to ask about craft breweries because in the couple of times I've been to India, and I've not been in the last 5 or 6 or 7 years, something like that. All the beer was what you'd anticipate Indian beer to be: Cobra, Kingfisher, those sorts of things that we have exported. I didn't see any of those sorts of craft beers, and I wondered if that's something that's changed or.
Yeah, it has changed a lot actually. Unfortunately, I'm gluten intolerant, so I can't try them, and I'm not much of an expert on them. I can't remember the names, but there's a lot now. You see them popping up all the time. And mainly coming from Goa, because Goa is very pro the liquor production industry. So a lot of the distilleries are there and breweries are there.
Yeah, no, I know it's a bit of a party place as well, isn't it? And a tourist hot spot, isn't it? I suppose.
Yeah.
Probably within India, actually, other than like the Taj Mahal and whatever. I imagine Goa's probably your biggest sort of place.
It's the main beach destination for India, really.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. I am really interested to talk about India with you and that related to your books and all sorts of things, because it's one of those places that I think I always talk about it as being sort of the first place I really got into travel and visiting new places and all of that. It's got something very sort of a real connection to it, I think. And I know a lot of people, a lot of travelers will think that as well.
Yeah.
Going a bit closer to home, I'm drinking a Champion beer. There we are,
Great name.
Champion. Yes, which is from, I don't know. I can't find a place. It normally says what town or city it's from, but
it's lucky the label says award-winning, because it'd be a bit bit rough calling it champion if they've not won anything.
I know. I've just also noticed it's 7.3%. So
Oh.
if I start, you might have to do the second half of this conversation on your own, mate. You know.
It's almost as strong as my gin.
Oh yeah, it probably is. It probably is. Oh gosh. Well, thank you for staying up and joining me. It's always great to have these conversations and connect with people like this. So you write one series, the John Hayes series, or have you branched that off into several others at this time?
That's my main series. That's the one I started with. But I have branched out. I've just finished a trilogy based set in Hong Kong, set during the pro-democracy protests in 2019. I was actually there then, and so that the third book came out end of last month, and tomorrow I've got the second book in. I don't know what you call two books.
Yeah, there should be a word, shouldn't there?
Yeah. Zoology. I'm not sure. It's not biology. But so the second book of it's a psychological, two psychological thriller novellas, so shorter books, 20,000 words, and it's about what's the best way to describe it without giving the story away? Well, the first book is where the marriage is deteriorating, and things get to a point where the husband wants to kill the wife.
Whoa.
And the second book, so that's called The Devil Inside, and the second book, Flipped, tells the same story but from the wife's point of view. So that comes out tomorrow. But I started with, that was my first. See there, my first book, Vengeance. This is the first book in the John Hayes series. So this is what got me on the journey.
Yes, that's the one I've seen around quite a lot.
Yeah. So that's 7 books now, with an 8th coming out hopefully before Christmas.
Nice.
So I can get it to my editor in time.
That's fantastic. I have just seen in the comments, sorry to interrupt you, a couple of people have put they can't hear me very well. I wonder if I've just messed around with my settings, and I wonder if that's made a difference. Let me know if you can hear me a little bit better. So John Hayes, there's a lot. There's a lot then I want to talk about in that, because you've sort of, I know you lived in Hong Kong for a little while, and they sort of inspired your. Wow, you lived there twice, gosh.
Yeah.
And they sort of inspired your books there. But let's talk about John Hayes first, because he was the first character you wrote then in that book that you've just showed us.
That's right. That's
Who
right.
Is he? So, what's his story? Where did he come from?
Well, he, I love to read thrillers, but the thing I've noticed was that most heroes in thrillers are ex-military or ex-CIA or currently in the Secret Service or something, and have special skills and have all the contacts they can call on. And I thought it would be interesting to tell a story from the point of view of a normal person, like you or me, without all those skills. And if we were put into certain situations, how would we deal with it? So that's how I came up with John Hayes. And John Hayes is just a normal person who I describe him as an ordinary man in extraordinary circumstances. So the first book, Vengeance, is actually set here in Bangalore. And it's the story of John Hayes is a British expat, posted here to India, working for a bank which has their back office operations here in Bangalore, and loving his time here. He and his wife recently married, and then one day she goes out for dinner and comes back late at night and gets into an accident. And she gets brutally assaulted by the people who were in the car that they had an accident with, and unfortunately gets killed. And the story is about how John tries to get justice, and when he can't seek justice through normal legal means, he, through a series of events, he takes matters into his own hands. So it's a sort of a vigilante justice type story. And it was a lot of fun to write because I just myself in the same situation. I thought, what would I do?
Yeah.
And had to work out because, as an author, we need to make it realistic. And I can't write about CIA procedure or police procedure and things like that without doing a lot of specialized research and without having context so I can draw upon. So I thought, okay, if I was in a situation, what would I actually do and how would I get out of it? How would I make sure I wouldn't get caught? How would I react? So I got to live vicariously through this character. And, it was a really enjoyable experience writing it. And it actually shocked my mother because she said, how can my peaceful, calm son come up with such horrible things? But we all have a dark side.
I know what you mean, and I was always a bit worried about people reading my books and thinking, how did you come up with those ideas as well?
Yeah.
But I think that's something you have to let go of pretty early doors, isn't it? And sort of let that go by the wayside and say, okay, it is.
Right.
People will understand. Yeah. So that was the first ever book. That was your first put in pen to paper, or would you written short stories or something before then that wasn't published?
I know I'd written. I started a blog. I called myself the Kiwi Gypsy, and I had a blog. Back in the day when everyone had a blog, it was a thing to do.
It was.
And I think I had maybe 10 people read it, of which one was my mom and maybe a couple of my brothers. It was a travelogue, really. It was stories of my time in India and various different places. And then I can't remember how I started, but I was quite a keen runner before all this COVID happened and sort of we got locked down. But I used to run a lot, and I pitched some articles to a magazine in New Zealand called Kiwi Trail Runner. And I pitched as, I'm a New Zealander overseas, and I thought I'd write about trails that I'd run on and adventures I'd had. And my ideas were accepted. So I wrote a number of articles for them and got paid for it. And I thought, ooh, I can actually get paid for writing stuff. So those are the sorts of things I've written, but outside of work, I've written lots of emails and reports and brochures because I was in real estate. So, advertising, marketing brochures and things like that, which are thoroughly boring. But I've always been a really avid reader. I was one of those kids who I would read under the covers at night with a torch. This is in the days when your parents made you sleep at 9 o'clock, not like kids today. No social media and only 3 channels on the TV. So I used to read until late at night. I used to get up in the morning, open a book, wedge it under the pillow and read it while I'm getting dressed. I'd walk to school reading a book. I'd hide my book inside the exercise book or under the desk. Even today, my wife was telling someone that I read a ketchup bottle when I'm sitting at the table. It's just something I've always been fascinated with. And that I think has really helped me with writing and maybe sowed the seed that I could actually write something.
Was there any book that you specifically remember reading that was like, I want to write that, or I want to write something like that? Was there any author that you can particularly point to?
Yeah, not so much a book, but certainly authors. Wilbur Smith, loved his books. He's sadly passed away the other day.
Yes, recently.
2 days ago. Yeah. I loved his books. I loved Dick Francis. And when I was younger, I used to read an author called, I think his name was Willard Price. He's a Canadian author. And he wrote books about a family who used to travel around the world and capture wild animals for zoos and circuses. Totally politically incorrect.
Nowadays, yeah.
But I loved it as a kid. And it was amazing adventures. They would go to Borneo, they'd go to Kilimanjaro, and all these amazing places, which as a kid, they just really inspire you. Amazing adventures. So I remember reading those. I remember reading Dick Francis a lot. When I was a kid, I was an equestrian. So I had about 5 horses at one stage. used to do a lot of show jumping and cross country and stuff like that. So I really enjoyed the Dick Francis books because they were set in the horse racing world. And what I enjoyed, and I remember having this thought, which always comes to mind when people ask me what got me writing. But I remember thinking, every book he would write, they would all be set in the horse racing industry, but they would have a different theme. So one book might be about a photographer who goes around the races. So before writing the book, he would go and learn about photography and then to write a book about it. And then the next one might be about a pilot who flew trainers and jockeys around the different courses in the UK. So you learn to fly and then you could write about it. And I thought, what a cool thing to do. You go and learn a new skill, and then for 6 months, then spend 6 months writing a book. And I found out recently when researching for a talk I was doing that actually it wasn't him that did the research. His wife would go off and learn all these things, come back and tell him, and he would write it. But I thought that I always thought that would be such a cool way to make a living.
It would.
And then the same thing about traveling, because I love to travel, and until recent events, my wife and I traveled a lot, and I always thought that it would be great to just go to a place, spend an extended time there, and then write a book based in that.
Yes.
In that.
This is
my
dream. This is my. You've nailed it right there. I've yet to.
Well, your books are set all over the place as well, right?
But my intention has been to go somewhere. So say Bangalore. Say I'll do one in Bangalore. I'll come. I'll rent a house on the same street as you. Or we'll do writing in the morning and go and hang out in pubs in the afternoon. And I'll stay there for a month until I've got a first draft, and then move on to the next place. That's the dream. I haven't quite brought it into fruition yet, but I'm close.
Yeah. It'll happen.
Ernest
Hemingway, right?
Yeah, this is it. Well, Ernest Hemingway was the first digital nomad, I heard someone said a little while ago, which is great to think that he was writing in the 1920s before the digital thing was even invented. You know.
Maybe we don't want to end our lives like him, but
no, absolutely not.
Live them like that.
And
maybe a bit less alcohol.
We're both married men and be far more faithful and
a few less wives and a bit less alcohol.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Oh no, so you were living in Bangalore when you wrote that first book then, and that sort of inspired your reading.
Was I? I get a bit mixed up now.
That's the problem with moving around all over the place, isn't it?
Actually, no. I think I started it in Bangalore, but then I finished it, or wrote most of it in Hong Kong.
Right.
I'd been in Bangalore before I went to Hong Kong the second time. And so what happens in Vengeance is a lot of it's drawn from experiences I've had here. But I finished it when I was in Hong Kong, because I remember I'd got to the stage, I'd gone back to work in real estate after taking a long time off. And I remember sitting in an office and thinking, do I really want to spend the rest of my life sitting here in an office, sending emails to people who don't read them, trying to sell things to people who don't need them? And I thought, no, there's got to be more to life than this. And it was also, we were going through a lull in our industry. It got really quiet. And it was an industry I loved when I was younger. But I just thought, no, I need a change. It's just soul destroying. And so I went back to the book and I just started writing it. And the great thing about writing is that you can do it in the office and your boss doesn't know what you're writing. He just sees you working on the computer.
Yeah. Well done, mate. Top worker. Top employee.
Yeah. So many reports and emails he's sending. So I wrote most of it in the office, and then I started to feel guilty. So then I was lucky that I could work from home half the week and then half the week in the office. So I then ended up negotiating. I work all the week at home, and that's when I finished the book. I finished it in Hong Kong.
I can imagine that negotiation being a bit like that scene out of Fight Club, where he negotiates a full pay and no time in the office. Do you know it? Have you seen the film?
I don't remember it. It's such a long time ago since I've seen it.
He goes into his boss's office and essentially fights himself, and then blackmails his boss in saying that he he will have time off with full pay for the foreseeable future.
I'll have to watch it again.
Yeah, it's one of those. Let's have a quick jump over to the comments, Mark, and just see who's joining us. I've been haven't said hello yet. Fiona's in live, which is great. Thanks for coming in, Fiona. And Alison is here. Amazing, Alison. What are you cooking us tonight? The Hong Kong books are fantastic. If you haven't read them, Fiona says.
Oh yes, Fiona. Hi, Fiona.
Yes, so she's one of your avid fans already. Fantastic.
Yes. Yep.
Alison says she loves The Devil Inside. So is that one of the Hayes books, The Devil Inside?
No, The Devil Inside is the one about the married couple. The psychological thriller. So the sequel comes out tomorrow, Flipped.
That's the one with that's the right.
That's the wife's point of view.
I see. That's interesting. So go on.
Yeah. So the first story is told by the husband in first person, and the second story, Flipped, is told. That's why it's called Flipped. Is from the wife's point of view
of the same events that happen in the first book.
Yeah.
Oh, what an interesting sort of concept.
Yeah, it sort of happened by accident because I wrote The Devil Inside I joined up with some other authors to do an anthology. I think there were 13 of us, and we were half the proceeds were going for a charity, and so I wrote it very quickly. As I said, it's a novella, so just over 20,000 words. And then when I got the rights back, I thought, what do I do with this? So I published it separately. And then, you know how we're not supposed to, but we read through the reviews and hope they're all good, and then destroyed for a week when we get a bad one.
Normally what you do is you skip the good ones and you just read the bad ones.
Yeah,
and then
yeah. You remember the good one for the morning, and you feel fantastic. And you destroy it for a week when you read the one stuff. So a couple of the reviews were saying, that they didn't understand how it ended, because I'd written it deliberately that the end was left hanging, so that I wanted people to talk about it and think about it and think, how did that happen? How on earth did they work that out? That sort of thing. But there were so many people saying, how ridiculous! I don't understand the ending. How did it happen? So I thought, okay, I'm going to tell it from the wife's point of view. And then you'll find out how it happens. But then I couldn't resist leaving in the sequel a surprise ending as well. So actually, it's funny also that the Devil Inside has been quite. When I look at the reviews, it's been quite polarizing. There are some people who have said this is fantastic, absolutely loved it, and there are some people there are almost as many people who say absolutely hated it. And I wonder if it's because maybe it's touched a nerve in terms of relationships and things like that. And also, last 18 months has been very stressful for everyone. And people have been locked up with their partners. And, I just wonder if it's maybe people are seeing a bit of themselves in it or have gone through it. So I don't know. Yeah.
And that's a testament to your writing skill on it, if that's the case.
Well, it's either that or it's a crap book. So
no, I think if it was a crap, this is the thing with bad reviews that I often see, is that I think you've got to really passionately dislike something to have finished the book and gone onto the website and left a review. Like I read a few books that sometimes you pick up a book that you're just not that bothered about, and you get to about 30-40% through, and you're like, nah, next one, whatever, but to actually have seen it to the end and done that, I think there's got to be something driving you, hasn't there?
Yeah, I mean, if I don't like a book, I don't review it. I don't think it's fair. Someone has worked hard. I mean, okay, I'm biased. I'm an author, but anyway,
this is the thing.
I'm going to review things I buy on Amazon that break or are absolutely useless. So I suppose people do, and maybe it's because of my author bias. But I'll leave a good review, of course, if I love something. But if I don't like it, I just don't review it. I don't even put that star rating. I just don't do anything.
I know, and some people though, you do feel like that they're just angry at everything, and I've got some on my books that I just don't understand that they've I don't get it. I don't under the book and the review don't seem to match up. Like, you know,
Yeah,
have
yeah.
you got
Well,
confused somewhere in
well,
the?
I mean, in this, right, my top upvoted review, the most, you can put helpful. So one of the most helpful votes is a 1-star, which
Yeah,
says
mine is
there
too.
are more, there are F-bombs falling like lava from a volcano.
It's quite
And I'm
descriptive.
thinking, yeah, it's very. I actually don't mind it because if there is swearing in it, but then you've got a guy his wife has been attacked. He's not
Yeah.
going to be polite. And they didn't comment on the fact that there's sexual assault, there's violence, there's brutality. They didn't mind that, but they were just worried that he was saying the F word.
I think swearing is one of those things that does polarize readers, and we've talked about it on this conversation before.
Yeah.
And some people say if it fits the context, like you've described there, it clearly fits the context. And other people, quite, and it's quite fair for them to have their opinion. Say, I don't want to read something that has swear words in it because I might put it down and my children might pick it up, or I just don't want that in my consciousness. And I can understand both opinions actually, but you read the first one, as you've said, you get to the first page. Oh, it says an F, whatever. It's not for me.
Yeah.
Don't read the rest of the book.
I read the whole book. Yeah.
No, I've got one of those, and it really frustrates me that the top review is it's 500 something reviews. The one that's stuck at the top is a 1-star. I'm like,
Well, I look at mine as it just filters. If people are going to read it and not like it because of that review has filtered them out. So
that's what I think. That's what I think. I think.
And I just noticed in the comments, Fiona said not every book is a good fit for every reader, and she's right. There was someone I was listening to the other day. They said that you're not writing for everyone. And if you look at, if I'm feeling down about reviews, I go and find some really famous author and I go and read their 1-star reviews, and they shouldn't do, but it makes me feel better.
No, it's fair, isn't it? Yeah, it's absolutely fair.
It's like when you watch something on Netflix, people are raving about something, you watch and think, no, why did you all like that? So, yeah.
I always used to dislike going to the cinema with certain friends, and I can't even remember who they were now, because they'd always come out the cinema and they'd go, oh, that was rubbish. Just as you were walking out. And you'd had amazing, the most life-changing, inspiring, oh, that was rubbish. And it would really sort of dampen your mood of it. And I sometimes think reviews are a bit like that, how two people sat next to each other can see the same thing, but yet have such a different experience.
Yeah, exactly.
We've got a few other people to say hello to, and some of these are people I don't recognise, which is amazing. So maybe they're friends of yours, Mark.
So Polaris, Northeast India is my friend Troy, who told me it was 9:30 and got me all stressed out for an hour.
Lucky he didn't tell you it was 11:30, otherwise you would miss me. I'd be here on my own.
Killed him. Lucky he doesn't live very close to me. And Mohit, I have to thank for the
oh, fantastic
the gym. Yeah,
it does look great gym.
Oh, it's lovely. It's really nice. I just opened it for tonight.
Oh, cool.
Otherwise, normally it's down about there.
Yeah, that's it. The little bit that's left. I want to say hello to Ray as well, who's joining us from the US. He has said where Michigan. That's it. And he says, in my experience, USA thrillers are typically written by science or service industry career people. Oh, this is when we were talking about you not having experience in the forces or in the police service or whatever. Yes, there are a few ex-military career authors, but they're in the minority. I think Indiana Jones versus G.I.
Joe. Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, there are a fair number of ex-military authors, aren't there? I think the classic. Oh, who's the guy? One of the famous authors is.
You got Andy McNabb, right?
That's what
Bravo 20.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there is a lot you can do with research, isn't there? In that, if you're so inclined to go to that. I know I had a guy on the show, JT Patton, a little while ago, a few months back, and he used to work for the CIA, and he had to get during his first book, he was still employed, like you. He'd written it on lunch breaks and whatever, and he had to get it signed off by some commission within the CIA, which is set up to make sure people don't share certain facts, So, and now he's retired from that. And that isn't his real name, by the way, he said, and he wouldn't tell us what his real name is. So now he's retired from that business, he can write a bit more freely. But yeah, if you're watching this, JT, good. We'll have you back on sometime. Great to see you.
That's you know, as you mentioned about you can research it. That's something I've really enjoyed because I think it's so much easier for us now with the internet, is that we can that everything's at our fingertip. I mean, YouTube is amazing because I've not lived in a country where weapons are easily available, so I don't have a lot of knowledge about firearms, so I've had to research things like that, and does it have a safety?
How heavy is it? Well,
how
that's the thing, isn't it?
What sound does it make?
But you see these people on films like firing a desert eagle with one arm like this.
Yeah.
And I went to Budapest a couple of years ago, and we went on a shooting range, and we fired a desert eagle, and you couldn't fire that one-handed. I was like shaking. A relatively healthy, relatively strong guy, and I'm struggling to hold this at arm's length and deal with the kickback. Yeah, so it's one of those things.
Yeah. But as I said, YouTube is fantastic.
Yeah, it is.
And I found some channel called, I thought it had an interesting name. It was God's Guns and Family or something. God, Guns and Family. It was which I thought was an unusual combination, but it was very informative. I learned a lot from that. And when writing Vengeance, I had to research. Same with The Devil Inside. I had to research certain ways you could poison someone and not have it turn up on an autopsy. So if anyone looks, it's probably the same for you. If anyone looks at your internet search history, that's it. People knocking on your door.
This really worries me in a way. I've got a little worry about this. How to get away with ... whatever it might be.
I think I'm on every watch list.
Yeah, I think you probably are, mate. Yeah.
I'm a bit worried about international travel again. I'll probably get stopped at the airport.
Yeah, that's it. So let's talk about your international travels for a moment then. So how do you've lived in countless places by the sounds of it. You're from New Zealand originally?
Yeah, I consider myself a New Zealander. It's a little bit more complicated than that. I was born in Cyprus. My father was in the British Army, and my mother's a New Zealander. They met in England, and my father was posted to Cyprus, and that's where I was born. Mm-hmm. Then we moved to Germany, where my next brother was born. Then a little while in England, and then my dad switched to the New Zealand Army. So I grew up in New Zealand, but left home as soon as I could. Really, back 2 days after my 18th birthday, I was on a plane back to the UK. So I lived in the UK for 5 years, then went back to New Zealand for a year, then went to Hong Kong for almost 7 years, then back to New Zealand. But I was for a period of about 4 years. I would only spend the summer in New Zealand, and then would go to Thailand and India for the Southern Hemisphere winter. So it was always in somewhere warm.
Yeah.
And then at that time I was running my wife and I were buying old houses and renovating them and reselling them. And we'd do that in the summer and then travel for 6 months. And then we had the global meltdown in 2008. So we decided to take a break for 6 to 8 months, and we came to India with a suitcase and ended up staying here 8 years. So totally unplanned. And then I went back to Hong Kong again for almost 4 years, I think. And decided to travel again, packed up Hong Kong, came to India for 2 weeks, and then COVID happened. I've been here ever since.
So India, for you, must have some kind of magic to it to sort of keep bringing you back. I know circumstances play part of that as well.
Yeah. I mean, my wife's Indian. We actually met in Hong Kong. But I also have an Indian connection in that my father was born in India.
Oh, right.
So his parents, my grandfather's from Yorkshire, and he was stationed in India before independence, and he met my grandmother, who's actually Anglo-Indian from Kerala. And she was, so her family, I think it's Anglo-Indian, but it's sort of Dutch and German parentage. and she was working in Bangalore as a nurse, and met my grandfather, and they fell in love, got married, and my father was born in Bangalore, and somehow I've ended up back here just by chance.
That is amazing, isn't it? How those
Yeah,
things call to you, and
yeah.
that sort of return. Yeah, somehow, some
Yeah, I mean, I've
intuitive
been here
way.
long enough now that it's just as much home as it is anywhere else.
Mm,
Um, and when I'm out and about, I forget that I very often forget that I look different
yeah.
to Indians,
Do you,
because it just feels normal.
I always think when you're in a place for about 2 or 3 days, it just begins to feel normal, doesn't it? To
Yeah,
start
yeah,
with, you do feel a bit self-conscious for the first little
yeah,
while, and then you're just like, oh, this is where the shop is, this is where the pub is, this guy's friendly, this guy doesn't look so friendly, whatever. Like,
yeah.
yeah, I like that. I like that. And you've sort of, I can see that you've sort of ticked off some of those places along the travels in terms of your writing. So you've got the series in Hong Kong and the series
Yep.
that you set in India. Did you do your later
Well, actually,
ones?
John Hayes' series is actually set all over the place. So the first book
Right.
is in India. Um, this one, which is the original cover, which is now changed, is set in Hong Kong. Sorry, the
Oh, cool.
reflective.
A
Yeah,
million reasons.
yep. The third one is set in. I'll stop the
I
reflection.
love how you've got them all here ready to
Yeah,
go. You're a pro at
I
this,
only got
mate.
three of
You're a
them.
pro.
Yeah. This one's set in Thailand. So I've had him moving around.
Mm.
After that, he goes to Oman, and then back to India, then Sri Lanka. So yeah, he's moved around a bit. Oh, he went to Syria as well. So all these places I've been to except Syria,
Yeah. So
for obvious
that one
reasons.
involved a lot more research, did it, to
A lot
take
more
him to Syria?
research, but I also because I've been to Oman,
Yeah.
Jordan, Iran, so I
Many
used a
regions.
lot of that for as a basis. But I had to do a lot of work on Google Earth to look at terrain, look at towns, satellite view, that sort of thing. Which is, I mean, we're so lucky that we can do that.
Oh, we are. Because even if
Yeah,
you've been, your memory isn't
yeah,
that great, I always find. You get the feeling of it, but it's
yeah.
putting those things together that is
No,
sort
that's
of the
right.
problem,
That's
isn't it?
right. I mean, I'm much. This is why I found the COVID period very difficult because I look to there's so many things as a writer that you absorb from the environment, so which you don't necessarily absorb consciously, but you
Mm,
remember, smells, sounds, what people say, how people are dressed, and
yeah.
so that's why I always want to set it somewhere I've been, so I can give it more authenticity. But during COVID, when we've been stuck inside and you just see the same people and the same walls, I found it very hard to be creative. Even though
Mm.
everyone's saying, "Oh, you're a writer, you're used to it, that you should write a lot more," but it was actually very difficult. So
Yeah, I think you're right. I I found it similarly difficult in certain ways, but in other ways, it was really nice to have the solitude to just crack on with actually getting involved in stuff. Having an unlimited amount of time to just go and work on stuff, I found quite useful. But now I'm sort of thinking, it'd be nice to go and travel here, there, and everywhere, which
yeah,
we're all starting to do again. So that's a
yeah, that's
that's
good.
a positive thing. Let's have a quick look over these comments because there's been quite a lot going on whilst we've been talking. So hold on, I'm going to
Steve
start
Moore,
at the
is it?
top and we'll see where we're at. Alison's cooking chili, which sounds lovely. Alison's always cooking something whilst we're on here. Um,
That's good.
Steve, Steve Moore's joining us. All right,
Hi, Steve.
lads. Really enjoyed Mark's books.
Thank you,
Um,
Steve. Enjoy yours.
Fiona, yes, yeah. Fiona says, with some of your bad reviews, Luke, I don't think those people have even read the book. I hope so, Fiona. I hope so. Um,
Have you
Steve Taylor.
noticed? Have you noticed just on the reviews? Have you noticed when if Amazon does a free promotion for your book, right? All the bad reviews seem to come from people who got the books for free.
I've noticed that
Isn't
a
that
hundred
strange?
percent, 100%, and I think that every time I do a free promotion, I get about another 50 to 100 reviews. Some of them good, some of them bad. But
Hmm.
I think those people who are on that mailing list for the free books are particularly avid on the review button,
Yeah,
whatever.
but
And that's,
negatively, I can't understand.
I mean, I don't think always negatively. I think it's probably a fair balance, but I
Yeah,
have noticed that they definitely review more than the general populace, perhaps, or that's what I've seen anyway. Yeah. Alison says she hasn't got a problem with the use of profanity in books. I know it just depends. I think every reader's different, aren't they?
yeah, yeah.
And Polaris, on who's watching on YouTube, this is one of
Yeah.
your friends, I think, Mark.
Troy,
Says,
yeah,
I've
Troy.
read all the books released so far. Troy, that was it. Hi, Troy. Great reads. Just wondering if that was a goldfish bowl. Oh, your drink. I think Troy missed you introducing the drink at the start. Might as well be.
It's not a goldfish, it's a slice of orange.
It does look a bit goldfish-esque.
Yeah, I've stopped drinking goldfish a long time ago.
Kevin says, hey, chaps. Kevin's in Spain, Andalusia, so another international.
Lovely part of the world.
Yeah. Steve Moore says DC Alden is a brilliant ex-military author. I didn't know DC was in the military. He's been on the show as well. We didn't talk about that. Maybe we did, and I've forgotten about it.
I'm going to write these names down.
Yeah, DC Alden's a great one. A great author. Ray says that he's recently worked with Nathan Burrows, who I've heard of, but have not met.
Yeah.
Of Norwich, whose military medical series has done quite well. It's just plain good fiction, regardless of the setting.
Okay, Nathan Burrows.
Great. And Alison talks about growing up as an army kid, that you get the travel bug from a young age. So yeah. I assume that's because she has that experience herself as well. And Fiona finally says, I think it's that they're all collecting free books but being fussy about what they collect. I think you're absolutely right. Right there. Where do you find them, Mark? Most of your readers come from then? Do you have a big readership in those places that you set your books, or are they more American, Canadians, Australians?
I think if I look at the statistics from, majority is US, but then a lot of people shop on the US store anyway.
I'm alive.
Yeah. A lot of people shop on the US store, even if they're not in the US. So, but based on sales, majority of my readers come from US. But I've got them all over the place. It fascinates me actually when people email me where they're from, from even non-English speaking countries. And obviously Australia, New Zealand, but South Africa as well. I love it actually. I love the way that we can, reach out to people all over the world. I find it fascinating.
Yeah, I do. I love that, and I think I've, get emails every week from people from places as diverse as India to the Caribbean to Australia, Asia, the US. Who have read and enjoyed my books, and reviews from those who haven't, so it's fine either way, You must find spending a lot of time in India that you are amongst a lot of people who don't converse in English all of the time then, because I know English is one of India's main languages, but you've got Hindi and Punjab and countless others. Do you know of authors like yourself who write in those languages to that market? Is that a thing that's done? I mean, I suppose it must be.
Yeah, there are. There are authors that write in Hindi, which is the official language of India. But there also, I believe, obviously I don't read the other languages. But I believe there are also a lot of authors in the different state languages as well.
Yeah. But there must be millions and millions of Hindi speakers then. A billion people, or 1.1 billion or something in India, isn't it?
1.2, 1.3, I think now.
Wow.
But yeah, most people speak English, and even if they don't, they understand it. And I've had conversations because I can now get by in Hindi. I've had conversations where people speak to me in Hindi, and I speak to them in English, and we both understand. So it's quite fascinating. I mean, and you pick up bits of the other languages as well, and some of them are a little bit similar. So you recognize words. The writing is very different though. That's really difficult. It's not like going to Europe where you can work out what things, because a lot of the words are the same, because they pretty much come from the same base. Like I was reading something in French today and I thought, oh, I'm quite surprised how much I can understand. Then I turned the page and realized how much I can't understand. But in India it's different because the languages are different script. But the language that my wife's community speaks, there is no script. It's only spoken.
Wow.
So it's fascinating. I can understand her language. I can't speak it. It used to be a secret language. She used to complain about me to her family, and can't anymore. Understand everything she's saying.
So is she from? Where you are originally? Then is she?
No, she's so she's actually born and brought up in Bombay, but the community, her language is from the west coast, almost directly west from Bangalore. It's a place called Mangalore, between Kerala and Goa. And it's they speak a language called Tulu, and there's no script. It's only spoken.
Yeah. That's one of the things. That is again a great thing about travel, isn't it? Is understanding these sort of little things that you could have, and putting that sort of detail in a book. A character who has that, who speaks that, and says, "Oh, that we don't have a writing. It's all verbal, whatever, however that might be." I mean, they must write in a different language then, in Hindi or English or whatever.
Yeah, I think they write in. I think they might write it in the same script as Kannada, which is the state language. I'm not sure actually. I've only heard. I've never seen my wife write it, so I'll have to ask her now. But it's, as you say, it's little things like that. I love to put in my books. I like to put bits of the local language in, because I love language, and I love seeing similarities between different languages. And I always try and put a bit in. Like my Hong Kong series had a lot of Cantonese swear words, and had slang as well, because during the protests, they developed this slang to describe what they're doing, so they could talk about it in public without admitting that they were committing an illegal act. So so the teams of these, they had groups of people who would create Molotov cocktails and light them and throw them, and they were called it was called doing fire magic, and they were called wizards, the people who actually did it. And if you were protesting, it was called shopping.
So you'd say, I'm going shopping at 12. And they'd know. But they couldn't block it on you if you text it or whatever, WeChat, I suppose. That's the big thing there, isn't it?
Because the communist China's algorithms, and I mean, they're probably top in the world at picking up stuff like that. That's how they censor everything in China. And they were heavily involved in the protests. I mean, obviously it was a big concern to them that people wanted freedom in Hong Kong. So all their systems, all their facial recognition, stuff like that, which is why everyone wore masks, because it was all being captured. So they developed this whole new vocabulary to describe what they're doing, and to be able to get away with it. To be able to have that conversation without getting caught. So it's fascinating.
What a great way to have, a great detail to have been able to include. And I think had you not have been on the ground in that time, I mean, you may have read about that in books and articles afterwards, but you wouldn't have had the immediacy, I don't think, of
no. Being able to that's one of the reasons I wrote the trilogy, is actually because you see what's happening on the news, and it's the same with things worldwide, everywhere. You see what's being shown on the TV, you read in the newspaper, and if you've been actually there and then you read how they've reported in the paper or on the news, you think, hang on, that doesn't quite match up. So I was the protests affect me quite deeply. I saw some incredible things. I took part in some of the marches where they had 2 million people on the street and they were peaceful. People were walking along with, the grandparents, grandchildren, people from all walks of life, people handing out free food and water and free medical assistance because it was hot. So people walking all the way across Hong Kong Island, getting dehydrated and things like that. It was a real sense of community and a real sense of camaraderie, and it really made me feel that I was part of Hong Kong. There's always been this sort of expat Hong Kong people split. It's particularly when I first lived there. It changed a lot the second time I lived there because for a number of reasons. It was a younger generation, and that generation a lot of them had been sent overseas when Hong Kong was handed over in '97. So a lot of them sent their kids away to get foreign passports, get educated overseas, and they came back to Hong Kong. So they had a whole different worldview, and it really changed things. But the feeling you got, in those protest marches was just incredible, absolutely incredible. And then when I saw how things were being described, official police statements, government statements, and things, I was thinking this is completely different to what was happening. And it upset me quite a lot. And then I thought, I'd really like to show the different side of it that's not being reported. But how do I do it? Tied in with what I do. So I wrote fiction, a fictional story, 3 main characters, and set it during that time. So it's all based on actual events and things I witnessed and experiences I had, but it's the fictional story. And it was very personal to me. It probably doesn't quite fit the usual. It's more of a sort of action adventure, I suppose, bit of romance. So it's not really a specific genre, but for me as an author, and creating our own art, I felt I had to do it. But also, having said that, by the time I finished the 3rd book, I'm actually glad it's over, because the research, particularly during the 3rd book, the research that I did to refresh my memory, it just brought back a lot of anger, and I found it quite stressful. And even some of the people that I was consulting, they said, "Look, I don't want to remember it anymore. Too much PTSD." It was actually pretty terrible. So it was cathartic, but it was also, I'm glad it's over.
That is a really interesting story, and thank you for sharing that. And it makes me wonder sort of how you do see a lot of people writing about things that are very close to them and very personal to them, particularly in sort of memoirs. They're writing about, either losing their parents or losing someone close to them, or some kind of really, and it makes you think that perhaps, that can be as damaging as it can be. And you must take real strength to put that out, because for you and I to put out a story that's come out of the ether that we've made up, that's really a bit of fun, isn't it? Is one thing. But to put out there something that you've lived through, that has affected you, that has no doubt changed you or made you change your perspective on things, is something completely different. So that must be a real painful and brave, and I can't imagine that so much.
I mean, from my point of view, it wasn't brave. The people who are actually doing it were brave, and I'm in awe of Hong Kong people in what they did. And I mean, they were small. It's a city. In the terms of China, it's 6 million people. It's one city, and there were 2 million people marching peacefully, right? But when the government did not listen after how many protest marches, and people decided to start taking more forceful action, and the police really started getting brutal, those were the people who were brave because they were giving up everything. You know, they're giving up potential employment. Some people quit their jobs. People were having problems with their families because maybe other family members didn't agree with it. So it split families. There were even people in the police who didn't want to go along with it, but had to because they got mortgages to pay, or some of the police agree with it, and their wives and their children didn't agree with it. There'd been people kicked out of homes.
Yeah.
But you know, you got. I mean, I've seen people who look like, you know, they've never been to a gym or anything like that. They're not, you know, they're just small, some skinny young kid with an umbrella and a surgical mask, and he's got the might of the basically the Chinese government backed Hong Kong police with every possible riot weapon that money can buy. I mean, the amount of tear gas they fired, there were birds falling out of the sky. People have got, you know, lifelong breathing problems. They'll end up with because of the amount of tear gas that was fired. In Hong Kong, you've got these massive buildings, and these streets are like canyons, and there's nowhere for the tear gas to disperse. And then they're using rubber bullets, bean bags. When people, it got to the stage where people would, when people were getting arrested, they would shout to the camera crews, "My name is Mark Abbott, and I am not injured," because they knew that 2 days later, when they're released, or 3 days later, they'd have a broken arm, or broken ribs. The amount of bodies that were found. That was supposedly suicide and things like that. There were the bodies that turned up. There was sexual assault of girls, female prisoners. It was just awful. And you know, it's all, and it's so much of it's just been hushed up and covered up. And the problem is I mean, UK's done a bit. They've given a special visa for Hong Kong people, and I read somewhere that 60,000 Hong Kong people, 60,000 people have left UK in the first 6 months of this year to take up residence in UK. Right. But it's all too little too late, because no one wants to stand up to China, because everyone wants cheap stuff from China, right? Everyone has this stuff made there. So, you know, it was a real David and Goliath battle, really.
It sounds one of those, and it sounds one of those amazing things that to have been on the ground there and to put that into this story is quite a feat. Fiona sums it up very nicely in this comment. She says you should be really proud of those books, and I think
thank you, Fiona.
Absolutely second that. Yeah.
She's also asked, was I in danger? Yes. I wasn't brave enough to be out there, and I was always thinking, you know, I don't want to get deported. But you know, I have that. The thing is, I always had a position of safety. I've got a different passport, right? I can always go to another country, and that's what used to annoy me about the expats here, who used to say, "Oh, these people, they're ruining Hong Kong." They can just get on a plane and go. But whereas these people who are fighting for the freedom, they have nowhere else to go. It's their country. I mean, I know it's a city, but it's their country. Their culture's different to China. They speak a different language to 99% of China. Their food is different. Their way of thinking is different. They've grown up free, and they they don't want to be. They keep saying we're not Chinese. We are Hong Kong people, and we have nothing against Chinese people. We just don't want the communist government. So it used to really annoy me. And one of the big things that made me write the book is I remember seeing people out on the street, putting their lives on the line, their livelihoods on the line to be free, and walking past a bar full of expats who were sitting there drinking their beers and looking out and laughing and making fun. And I just thought, this is wrong. You know, this is so wrong. But that's my rant over. I should talk about something.
I really enjoyed it, mate. And there's always part of me as a traveller that wants to understand that, Do you know what I mean? I want to understand the struggle and the important and the things that the local man, woman, or whoever is going through, and it is sometimes that can be a challenge in itself, can't it? Sometimes I
Mm.
feel that though those things you don't fully understand when you see something going on. You don't fully understand the ramifications of a protest or an issue or a whatever, as someone who's even there for a couple of weeks or a few days or even longer. It takes some sort of digging to find out what that real situation is, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's where I think writing is writing and traveling. We're actually blessed to be able to do the
Mm.
two,
Yeah.
because I mean, traveling anyway for anyone is such a fantastic thing, and it just shows you that we're all the same. We all want the same things. We all want, to be happy and be comfortable and to find love and be healthy. And it doesn't matter what country you're in or what environment you're in. Um, so travel shows you more of actually makes you realize the similarities between us all. And as writers, we look at it in a way that we somehow we're absorbing all this stuff, so we can put it down on the page, and relate it, put it in a way that other people can relate to it.
Mm.
So I think we're having chosen the profession that we have and having that love for travel, we're sort of doubly blessed.
Yeah, and I think storytelling is like the oldest teaching tool of all time, isn't it? I mean, even
Yeah,
if you look back to the myths of ancient Greece or any religious text that came afterwards, it's not saying, it's not being as obvious as saying here are the rules you've got to obey. In most cases it says here's a story about a farmer who goes out one day and does this, this, and this, and you
yeah,
have to sort of extrapolate what the lesson is from that and what the moral
yeah,
is from that as the reader. And I think what you're talking about there is actually you've done the same in your books. I've not read them, but I will do now. From what you've said, I really look forward to it. You're sort of putting us as the reader on the street and saying, what do you think is right? What do you think is the right thing to do? And I think that's the power of our profession, really.
yeah, yeah. It's like when I researched for my book, Payback, the John Hayes book Payback, which is set in Syria.
Mm.
Um, Again, I had to do a deep dive. Apart from locations, things, I had to do a deep dive into what actually is happening there, and what people are going through, and that was again fascinating. Now, this time I couldn't actually experience it myself, but it was fascinating because it is so complicated of who's
Yeah.
got their fingers and they're trying to put their fingers in the pie, and there's um, who's the bad person, who's a good person, and actually it's not that easy.
Mm.
And
Mm.
often the good people and the bad people behind the scenes are actually together, and they're
Yeah.
doing things and funding different. It's just so complicated. But trying to get the human side of the all that sort of political dirtiness that's going on behind the scenes, and trying to portray that human side of it and show how it's affecting the people on the ground. That's what I really try and put across, and I find it that I love trying to write about that, and also trying to show that again, those people, they speak a different language, they're going through somewhere, they live in a completely different environment to 90% of my readers, but they're actually the same. So I'm always want to try and get that sort of thing across, that we are all the same, and try and at least counter some of this things that we're taught, that these people are bad, the people who speak this language they're wrong, or people who believe in this are wrong, and yeah, it's just nonsense.
I love that. I love what you said there. The idea that that's your purpose, is to try and break down those barriers. I think that's a really
Yeah,
important thing.
yeah, I found it so helpful in my life, and in living in different countries.
Mm.
It's just so important.
Yeah, I think so, and I love it. I love it so much that my books encourage people to talk about their travels. Not a week goes past where, and I imagine this happens to you as well, that I get an email saying, I traveled to this place in 1983 and this happened and this happened. And it's like reading about that place has brought back that memory of that person traveling there and the experience that they had in that place. So I think that can be a lovely sort of link, can't it, between author and reader, that you've both got that shared sort of experience.
Hopefully it also inspires people to go to those places if they've not been.
Yeah, that is a hope of mine as well. I don't know how. I think it depends who reads it, doesn't it? Because some people will read it and it'll just be a book, and that's fine. I think you've got to have your mindset in a certain way for that to be persuasive. You've already got to be on the way to that, haven't you? In order to.
Also, especially with both of us writing thrillers, it probably depends on which scene is set in that place, because it might be so gruesome and awful that people don't want to go there.
I mean, that is something I'm quite cautious of. I always try to make sure there's some redeeming feature, I mean, I write pure fiction, so I don't put any sort of event that is happening on the ground in there. It's very much the people are there for a couple of weeks to solve a specific thing, and then they come home again. They're not getting involved really in sort of the things that we've discussed so far. So it's with that in mind. I can't imagine the books you've just described in Hong Kong would be particularly encouraging for someone to think, oh, that's a great place, I want to go. But then maybe to take that back, because they might put you in the mindset of someone working in a bar or a restaurant there who lives from the tourist trade and wants to support, and then by visiting you're sort of feeding into that ecosystem or whatever. I don't know, but
I think perhaps it may have put people going to Hong Kong, put them off going to Hong Kong. But to be honest, I love Hong Kong.
Yeah.
Well,
that's why you wrote it, clearly. That's why you visited it in your writing for all those months and years that it took you to write those 3 books.
Yeah, I mean, it's I've lived there twice. I've visited numerous occasions when I haven't lived there. I met my wife there. The place is very, I mean, to give an example, when I left Hong Kong the first time and I moved down to New Zealand, I remember seeking out Cantonese restaurants just so I could hear Cantonese and hear that noise. These big dim sum restaurants where there's just a noise which you don't get in a normal restaurant, and just hearing this Cantonese, I thought, oh, this is fantastic.
This is home.
And but I mean, the place is very dear to my heart. I love the place. It's a fantastic city. It's vibrant. It's so international. It's what a lot of people don't realize is it's 70% of Hong Kong is actually country park. So everyone thinks there's just these big skyscrapers, but 70% is country park. It has incredible hiking trails, incredible running trails, incredible beaches. It's just politics, which sadly I've just got since I left. I don't think I will be allowed to go back, probably because of what I've written. If I get on the radar, but it's just not the same, most of my friends are leaving, those that can, those that can't want to leave. And there's just censorship is just terrible. I mean, people don't even put stuff in a WhatsApp message anymore.
Yeah.
How bad it is.
Yeah. But I remember,
as a tourist, go there 100%.
Yeah. I remember having a conversation with a university lecturer here in the UK, and they were really worried for some of their students, for students that lived in the UK and were studying in the UK, but because of things that they would write academically, they'd have to publish that they were arranging for these students to publish their dissertations under pseudonyms, or just not have a name on it in case it were to find its way back to whoever, and that would cause them problems later down, which is bonkers, isn't it, for an academic document to be censored in that's the ultimate free speech, I think, in your dissertation or your academic document, that you've researched as much as you can, even if it makes wild claims, you've backed them up with peer-reviewed research or something like that, And for censorship to get to that level is just a bit of a crazy, horrible situation.
Yeah.
and for it to be on the other side of the world. But I could almost get that in a Hong Kong university or a Chinese university of some description, but for it to be in a UK university, yeah.
Well, the problem is also is if as a Hong Kong person or even someone from mainland China, if you do anything that upsets the powers that be, you might feel you're safe in UK or Europe, but if you've got family back in Hong Kong or back in China, they're the ones that are going to suffer because they're the ones that are going to get it locked up and put pressure on you. And it sounds like something out of the Soviet Union or something, but it's actually going on. I've read about people in Australia who have had people sitting outside their house, Chinese agents sitting in the car outside their house, just sitting there to intimidate them. It was in Australia. So yeah, it's crazy.
Absolutely crazy. Yeah.
Which it's sad because China is a fascinating country as well. I mean, I've visited and had an amazing time. The people are so warm and friendly and welcoming, and they've had a fascinating history. It's just sad that a few people up top who are greedy for power want to rule everyone's lives. It's not just there; it's all over the world. So.
There you go. Well, there you go. If you're still hearing us at home, we've made it through, so we're fine. Thus far.
Yeah.
I'll go out in a minute and just see this blacked out windows, like Land Rover sitting out. Sitting out front. Oh, okay.
You're talking to Mark Abbott?
Yeah. Stop it. Yeah, you wouldn't get a warning. We just disappear. Right. Let's make it. Let's finish off on a bit of a lighter note then.
I think so.
What are you working on now? What's your next? Because you say you're releasing one.
Yeah, the one tomorrow, which is the sequel to The Devil Inside. That's flipped. And I'm working on the next book in the John Hayes series, which is called Faith.
Wow. So what number will that be in John Hayes?
That's number 8. And that's going to be set back here in India. Mm-hmm. And it's a continuation of book 7, which is called The Guru. Mm-hmm. And John goes on a spiritual retreat in Sri Lanka, and because he meets this very charismatic guy when he's there on holiday, and he invites him. He said, "Come up, I can help you." And John's been through a lot of traumatic stuff through the various books, and obviously has a lot of grief and PTSD and things like that. And somehow this guy senses it and says, "I can help you." So John's intrigued and goes up to this meditation retreat, and through a series of events finds out that the guru is maybe not as good as he appears to be.
Nice.
And so that book finishes on a little bit of it's sort of resolved, but finishes on a bit of a cliffhanger. And the book 8, Faith, is a continuation of that story. And the interesting thing is the title. One of my readers said that they really enjoyed The Guru, and they said, "But I wanted this to happen. I mean, you didn't finish it, but I think you should continue with the story." I said, "I am continuing with the story, but I tell you what, why don't you suggest a title for me?" So he came back with Faith. He said it's because it has the spiritual aspect, a continuation of the story about the Guru. He said, but also it shows that John Hayes has faith in himself and his ability to see things through. So I will give him a credit when the book's out. You came up with a title.
Gosh, we've talked for an hour and 14 minutes already, nearly, but we'll wrap up shortly. What did you? So you're working on that now. That's the book that's sort of on your laptop.
Yeah, on the laptop.
How long does it normally take you from first day fingers to keys to hitting publish and sharing it with us all?
If on a good writing day, I mean, I'm terrible. I procrastinate. I
know the feeling.
Any excuse. I mean, I love writing when I sit down and write, but it's like going for a run. As a runner, I love to go for a run, but they say the hardest thing about a run
Yeah.
is getting out the front door.
Getting out the door. Yeah.
The same. The hardest thing for a writer is to sit down and actually start typing. But if I sit down and I can write, I usually write about 3,000 to 4,000 words.
Decent.
In a day. So that's 3 or 4 hours throughout the day. I don't do it nonstop. I think I've written more than that in a day, but my brain goes to mush.
Yeah.
And then the next day I write hardly anything. So if you put it down in actual days, I could probably, if I wrote every day, every weekday, and maybe a Saturday, I'd probably finish a book in a month.
Wow. That's really good going.
My shortest book is 40 to 45,000. My longest book was the last Hong Kong one, which is 105,000. But they're usually around 70,000 words. But as I say, there are days when you don't, like today. I didn't get any writing done. I had some things to do in town, and some days your life gets in the way.
Yeah, I think you've got to roll with it, haven't you? I
used to put a lot of pressure on myself.
Every day.
Yeah. I mean, you hear these superstar writers who putting out a book every month, and they say write every day, and they're doing 5,000, 10,000 words a day. And so you start to feel guilty and inadequate, and you think, but not everyone can do that. And I actually,
but also
I don't want to.
Your books are like mine in the way that there's a lot of research involved. There's a lot of exploration and all those sorts of things. We're not just cutting off a chunk of cheese and chucking it in a bag. Like there's a lot of stuff that goes into that.
Yeah. Even not doing that, you need time for your sort of subconscious and your mind to actually work things out, because
100%.
Sometimes you get to a point and you can't think of what. I mean, the way I write, I don't plot out a book. I start with a single idea. I don't know who's in it, and I don't know how it's going to end. And so I might get to a point where I really don't know what to write next, and I need to go away and do something else. So physical exercise is good. I've got great ideas when I've been running, which I just need to. Or sometimes you might just sit and veg out in front of the TV, and then you see something and think, I could do something like that. And or just reading. I like to read, and I like to read in my genre. And I love to read about what are generally termed as conspiracy theories, but are often true. I love to read about stuff like that. So it's all material.
Yeah. It all just goes in, doesn't it? And you never quite know what bit's going to come out where, and it all just
exactly. And you don't know which book is going to go in. Like I've enjoyed today. I've had a day where I've had to go into town. I've had to brave terrible traffic, and I met a good friend for a very long lunch, which is completely unplanned. But I don't want to feel guilty that I've not been writing, because I feel tomorrow when I sit down, it's going to flow a lot better, because my brain's had time to sort things out. And however it does. I mean, I don't think that you can logically, certainly for me, you can explain logically how it works, because I'm always amazed at what ideas come out is completely unplanned, and how something I put in randomly, 5 chapters ago, and then I'm writing something and think, the start to that was way back then, but I had no idea why I wrote that. It's just bizarre.
I love it when that happens. Yeah. It's exactly the same. I mean, I plan it to an extent, the story arc, but it always changes. And the characters muscle their way through in the way they see things. So that's important. Mark, this has been amazing. We are going to have to wrap up. We've gone to 1 hour and 20 minutes almost, which is 20 minutes. I always plan for about an hour, but I mean, we've just had such a.
Hasn't felt like that long.
It never does it? It just flows. I want to go through a last couple of comments just to say, just to keep up and see what people are saying. Alison says that she lived in Hong Kong as a child as an expat, and then returned years later, and was amazed at the difference between the two. I think that's what she. What she means. And Fiona was brought up in Nigeria, in the Biafra
war. Yeah. Oh well.
So gosh, you're hitting a lot of sort of resonance with different people here, which is amazing.
I think I'm going to be emailing Fiona and getting some more info.
Yes, definitely. Do. That sounds like, one of your books coming up. Yeah. Troy says the Hong Kong series puts the reader in the eye of the storm from both sides. And again, he says he's off to bed.
Yeah, yeah. He gets up. He gets up very early. He's going to hit his kettlebells first thing.
Oh, is that what you mean? What he
Yeah.
means, KB? Got you.
KB,
Alison's threatening that there's a knock at the door for us both. Probably, maybe. Hopefully not.
Yeah.
Let's hope not. Thank you. Oh, and Ray says excellent commentary on the state of living in Chinese-controlled areas. Thanks.
Thank you.
And yep, thank you. Love this interview. Thank you. Cool. And yeah, she says I was a child, a kid, but please do. Mark, this has been fantastic. I've absolutely loved talking to you, and I think people have got a lot from it. Our readers have got a lot from it as well. Sort of looking behind the curtain. Where can people find you, firstly, and secondly, if someone's new to you, what would be a good place to start with your back catalogue? What book would you like them
I think people can find me on markdavidabbott.com as my website, or on Facebook. Again, Mark David Abbott, author. And Instagram, Mark David Abbott, author. And I think the best book to start on is this
Vengeance.
one. Yeah. Oh, this reflection's terrible.
No, I see it. We can see it. That's fine.
Yeah. That's the first one in the John Hayes series. I think that's a good place to start. It's certainly my most popular series. It's the least controversial. Yeah. I think if you like those and you want to try the Hong Kong ones and the domestic psychological thrillers of The Devil Inside, it'll probably come later.
Yeah.
I actually had a guy said I didn't like The Devil Inside, but I thought I'd give the John Hayes series a try, and I'm so surprised. I love it.
That's it. As someone said earlier, as Alison or Fiona, not every book is for every reader. So
yeah,
I think you writing cross styles, you can find different people or hit different people in different ways, perhaps.
Yeah, that's right.
Ladies and gents, thanks so much. I am joined by, I believe, next week. I'm just putting up my calendar. Yes, Nick Thacker is joining me next week. On Books and Beer.
Listen to that.
Yeah, that'll be great. So 5 p.m. UK time, which is, what time it is in wherever you are. Then I think I'm going to do 2 more after that, and then it'll be the end of the series. I've been doing these in series, Mark. So I did one up until the start of the summer and had about 6 weeks off, and then I'm going to do, as I say, 3 more now, and then have probably a month or maybe 5 weeks off over the Christmas period. But yeah, so next week, and then there'll be 2 more. I don't know who they'll be yet, but we'll let you know. Mark,
you should get Santa on for the last one.
Say again?
You should get Santa on for the last one.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that's a good booking. We'll see. He might be a bit busy, mind you, but
yeah. You better book him in now.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, ladies and gents. I will see you next week, and thank you, Mark, for joining me.
Been a pleasure. Thank you.